There is a moment after 50 when the word later begins to sound different. Not dramatic. Not loud. Not like fear at first. More like a quiet change in the air. A small pause before you say it. I'll do it later. I'll call them later. I'll take care of my health later. I'll say what I need to say later. I'll become the man I want to become later. For most of life, later feels generous. Open. Forgiving. Like a room somewhere ahead with the lights still on. When you are young, later feels almost infinite. There is always another year. Another season. Another chance to repair what was neglected. Another chance to become disciplined. Another chance to tell the truth. Another chance to love better. Another chance to stop wasting time. But after 50, something changes. Not because life is over. It is not. But because for the first time, you begin to feel the edges of time. You see it in photographs. People who were young with you now have gray hair. Some faces are gone. Some friends have become names in old messages. Parents are older, or absent. Children are grown. Your body negotiates differently. The mirror tells the truth even when your mind tries to move quickly past it. And suddenly, later no longer feels like a promise. It feels like a risk. This is the emotional center of EP 36. The moment a man realizes he has been borrowing against a future that may not be as large as he imagined. Not because he is doomed. But because time is now asking for honesty. Picture him sitting alone in the early morning. The room is still dark. Blue light touches the window before sunrise. A cup of coffee sits untouched on the table. His phone is face down. No noise yet. No one needing him. No urgent demand. And in that quiet, a thought appears: how much longer can I keep postponing my actual life? Not the life of obligations. Not the life of bills, roles, habits, and routines. The actual life. The conversation he has avoided. The body he has neglected. The apology he keeps delaying. The dream he keeps calling unrealistic. The friendship he let fade. The marriage truth he keeps stepping around. The peace he keeps waiting for someone else to give him. The man he keeps promising to become when things finally settle. But what if things never fully settle? What if later has been the hiding place of fear? What if postponement has disguised itself as patience? What if the real danger after 50 is not that time is running out, but that you keep living as if it is still unlimited? This is not meant to create panic. Panic wastes time too. This is meant to create clarity. Because maybe the second half of life does not need more dramatic promises. It needs fewer lies about later. Fewer days given away unconsciously. Fewer conversations postponed until the relationship becomes too distant. Fewer health decisions delayed until the body forces a crisis. Fewer dreams buried under the illusion of perfect timing. Because one day, every man realizes, later is not a place. It is a bet. And after 50, you must become very careful about what you keep betting your remaining years on. One of the most expensive illusions in life is the perfect time. It sounds responsible. Mature. Reasonable. I'll wait until things calm down. I'll wait until the family is stable. I'll wait until work slows. I'll wait until I feel ready. I'll wait until I know exactly what to do. But many men after 50 begin to realize something painful: the perfect time was often just fear wearing a respectable suit. Because life rarely opens a clean door and says, now. Now repair your health. Now rebuild your marriage. Now call your old friend. Now start the project. Now tell your children what matters. Now stop living beneath your own standards. Most of the time, life stays messy. There are bills. Responsibilities. Appointments. family complications, fatigue, doubt, old habits, new pressures. And if you wait until all of it becomes simple, you may wait your way into regret. Picture a man standing in his garage at night. A single yellow bulb overhead. Boxes stacked against the wall. Old tools. An exercise bike covered with a folded blanket. A notebook from years ago sitting on a shelf. Inside it are plans. Things he meant to do. A business idea. A trip. A training goal. A letter he never sent. He opens the notebook and sees his own handwriting from 10 years earlier. The handwriting looks younger. More certain. More alive. And suddenly, the sentence he told himself back then returns, when things calm down. But things did not calm down. They changed shape. One responsibility became another. One excuse matured into another. One season of waiting quietly became a decade. This is the cost of perfect timing. It does not always feel like failure while it is happening. It feels practical. But later, it can feel like theft. And the thief was not always life. Sometimes the thief was avoidance. This does not mean a man should become reckless after 50. Wisdom matters. Timing matters. Responsibility matters. But there is a difference between wise waiting and emotional hiding. Wise waiting has a plan. Avoidant waiting has a story. Wise waiting prepares. Avoidant waiting postpones. Wise waiting knows what it is waiting for. Avoidant waiting keeps moving the finish line. A man after 50 must learn to tell the difference. Because the remaining years are too valuable to be lost inside vague delay. If you say you will begin later, name the condition. When? After what? By what date? With what first step? If you cannot answer, it may not be timing. It may be fear. And perhaps the most powerful thing a man can do is stop waiting for life to become perfectly convenient before he becomes honest. Honest about what he wants. Honest about what is dying inside him. Honest about what he keeps tolerating. Honest about what his body needs. Honest about who deserves a phone call. Honest about which dream is still alive enough to deserve action. Because after 50, the perfect time may never arrive. But a real moment is already here. Imperfect. Uncomfortable. Unpolished. But yours. And maybe that is enough to begin. After 50, the body becomes less willing to negotiate with denial. It does not always shout at first. It whispers. A little less sleep quality. A little more stiffness. A blood test you keep postponing. A pain you explain away. A shortness of breath you pretend is nothing. A tiredness that no weekend fully fixes. A mirror you avoid because it tells the truth before you are ready. And maybe, for years, you have answered the body with the same word, later. I'll walk later. I'll eat better later. I'll check that symptom later. I'll stop drinking so much later. I'll sleep earlier later. I'll take stress seriously later. But the body is not impressed by promises. The body records behavior. And after 50, postponed care begins collecting interest. This is not about fear. It is about responsibility. Because the body is no longer just your private possession. It is the vehicle through which every remaining relationship, purpose, apology, legacy, and dream must still travel. If you abandon the body, you shrink the future. Not instantly. Gradually. You stop going places. You lose energy for conversations. You become more irritable because you are chronically exhausted. You avoid mirrors. You avoid doctors. You avoid movement. Then you call it aging. Some of it is aging. But some of it may be delayed responsibility. Picture a man sitting in a clinic parking lot. Late afternoon. Cloudy light across the windshield. Appointment reminder glowing on his phone. He almost cancels. Again. Because part of him does not want information. Information creates responsibility. And responsibility ends the comfort of pretending. But another part of him knows, avoiding the truth has not protected him. It has only delayed his authority over it. So he sits there, keys in hand, breathing slowly. Then he opens the car door. That small act may not look heroic. But after 50, honesty with the body is a form of courage. A man does not reclaim time by ignoring the body that carries it. He reclaims time by listening earlier. By moving before crisis. By treating sleep as a serious discipline. By understanding that strength now is not vanity. It is stewardship. By accepting that health is not separate from legacy. Because your children may need your emotional presence. Your partner may need your patience. Your future may need your stamina. Your own soul may need enough energy to feel alive again. And none of that happens easily in a body you keep postponing. So maybe the question is not, how long can I keep getting away with this? Maybe it is, what remaining life am I sacrificing by refusing to answer what my body has been asking? Because after 50, later becomes expensive. And the body often sends the bill first. Some conversations do not disappear because you avoid them. They become heavier. They sit in the room quietly. They enter your sleep. They return when you drive alone. They show up when a name appears on your phone. A child. A partner. A sibling. An old friend. Someone you owe honesty. Someone you miss. Someone you hurt. Someone who hurt you. Someone who may not know how much. You still carry. And for years, perhaps, you have told yourself, not now. They're not ready. I don't know how to say it. It will create trouble. I'll do it later. But later does something to unspoken truth. It thickens it. What could have been one honest sentence becomes a wall. What could have been an apology becomes a decade of distance. What could have been a question becomes a relationship that quietly settles into surface-level politeness. And after 50, that cost becomes more visible. Because time does not only run out through death. Sometimes time runs out through emotional distance. People stop expecting depth from you. They stop bringing you their real life. They stop believing the conversation will ever happen. And eventually, silence becomes the family language. Picture a father staring at his phone late at night. A warm lamp behind him. The room quiet. His adult child's name is on the screen. He has typed a message 3 times. Deleted it 3 times. Not because the words are complicated. Because pride makes simple words heavy. I was thinking about you. I know I was hard to talk to sometimes. I'm sorry for the way I handled that. I miss how close we used to be. I would like to know you better now. Small sentences. But after years of silence, small sentences can feel like walking across a bridge in the dark. This is why men delay. Not because they do not care. Because the emotional cost of beginning feels enormous. But the cost of never beginning may be greater. Because one day, the call may not be possible. One day, the person may be gone. One day, the relationship may still exist, but the softness may have dried out. One day, what you meant to say may become something you only say to a photograph, a voicemail, a grave, or an empty chair. This is not melodrama. This is life. And every man after 50 knows this more deeply than he admits. So perhaps the goal is not to say everything perfectly. Perfect words are often another excuse. Say the first honest thing. Not the whole history. Not the full defense. Not the polished speech. The first honest thing. I want to talk before more time passes. That sentence alone can open a door. And maybe the other person will not respond as you hope. Maybe it will be awkward. Maybe it will take time. Maybe it will not fix everything. But at least you will stop letting silence make the decision for you. Because after 50, the conversations you postpone do not become easier. They become inheritance. And you must decide what kind of silence you are willing to leave behind. Regret rarely arrives with enough warning. That is one of its cruelties. It does not usually stand at the door and say, "If you keep going like this, I will own you later." It waits. Quietly. While the days feel normal. While routines repeat. While you postpone. While you assume there will be time. Then one day, something happens. A diagnosis. A death. A child who no longer tries. A friendship that cannot be revived. A body that no longer gives you easy choices. A dream that has become more memory than possibility. And suddenly, regret speaks loudly. Not because it arrived suddenly. Because you finally heard it. This is why living by emotional numbness is so dangerous after 50. A man can spend years tolerating a life he does not respect because nothing has exploded yet. The marriage is not warm, but it functions. The body is not healthy, but it keeps moving. The dream is not dead, but it is untouched. The friendship is not gone, but no one calls. The relationship with the children is not broken, but it is shallow. The soul is not screaming, but it is tired. And because nothing is on fire, he calls it fine. But fine can become one of the most expensive words in later life. Fine can hide loneliness. Fine can hide fear. Fine can hide spiritual resignation. Fine can hide a man slowly becoming a stranger to his own remaining years. Picture him sitting in a quiet living room at night. Television light moving across the wall. Phone nearby. No one has called. Nothing is technically wrong. The bills are paid. The house is still. The chair is familiar. But something inside him asks, is this the life I meant to end up living? That question can feel dangerous. So he reaches for distraction. Another show. Another scroll. Another snack. Another evening spent avoiding the truth that nothing is wrong, but something is missing. This is where EP 36 must be honest. A life does not have to collapse to require change. Sometimes. The absence of crisis is not proof that you are alive. It is only proof that the structure has not failed yet. Regret often grows in lives that look stable from the outside. Because no one intervenes when a man is quietly abandoning himself. No one forces him to call. To train. To apologize. To begin. To stop pretending. To tell the truth. He must become his own warning. That is maturity after 50. Not waiting for regret to become unbearable. Listening while it is still a whisper. Asking, what am I postponing that I already know matters? What truth keeps returning when the room is quiet? What would I regret if time suddenly became smaller? These questions are not comfortable. But they are merciful. Because they arrive while choice still exists. And maybe that is the gift. Not that time is endless. But that awareness came before the final door closed. So stop living as if regret will warn you early enough. It may not. Warn yourself now. Then move. Every tolerance has a cost. Not always immediately. Not always visibly. But always. The relationship you keep tolerating without honesty. The work that drains you without meaning. The health habits you keep excusing. The resentment you keep carrying. The cluttered mind. The unfinished apology. The friendship that only survives because you never name what hurts. The days spent waiting for someone else to change before you begin living differently. These things do not only cost peace. They cost life. Actual life. Hours. Mornings. Energy. Attention. Years. After 50, this becomes serious because tolerance is no longer cheap. When you were younger, you could waste 5 years and still feel there would be endless space to recover. After 50, 5 years has a different sound. 5 years is birthdays. Grandchildren growing. Health changing. Parents gone. Friends aging. A body that may not wait forever. A dream that may lose its fire. This does not mean every uncomfortable thing must be abandoned. Life requires endurance. Commitment matters. Responsibility matters. But there is a difference between meaningful sacrifice and unconscious toleration. Sacrifice is chosen. Toleration often just continues. Sacrifice has purpose. Toleration often has fear. Sacrifice builds something. Toleration slowly spends you. Picture a man driving home from work in silence. Evening traffic. Red brake lights ahead. Gray sky above the windshield. He has made this drive for years. Same route. Same. Exhaustion. Same thought, I can't keep doing this. Then he arrives home, eats, scrolls, sleeps, wakes, repeats. Days become months. Months become years. And because he never made a decision, life made one for him. This is how toleration becomes destiny. Not through one dramatic mistake. Through thousands of avoided choices. EP 36 is not telling a man to destroy his life impulsively. It is asking him to stop pretending that doing nothing has no cost. Doing nothing spends time too. Avoiding conflict spends time. Avoiding doctors spends time. Avoiding truth spends time. Avoiding decision spends time. And time is the one currency after 50 that cannot be replenished. So maybe the question is, what am I paying for this tolerance? What has it already cost me? What will it cost if I give it 3 more years? Who will I become if I keep accepting this as normal? These questions can feel confronting. But they are necessary. Because some men think they are being patient when they are actually being passive. Some think they are keeping peace when they are actually avoiding truth. Some think they are being loyal when they are actually abandoning themselves. And some think later will fix what only a decision can change. But later does not fix what you keep feeding with silence. So perhaps the reclamation begins when a man finally understands, everything I tolerate is spending part of my remaining life. And I must decide what is still worth the cost. Not every dream dies. Some are buried alive. Under responsibility. Under practicality. Under family needs. Under fear of looking foolish. Under the voice that says, it's too late now. After 50, a man may think the dream is gone because he stopped speaking about it. But sometimes it is not gone. It is quiet. Waiting to see whether he will ever become brave enough to take it seriously again. This does not have to mean a huge dream. Not every dream is a business, a book, a journey, a reinvention. Sometimes the dream is smaller, but no less sacred. To feel strong again. To learn music. To write the story. To travel to one place before age makes it harder. To build something with your hands. To mentor younger men. To repair a relationship. To live 1 year with more courage than habit. A dream after 50 may no longer be about proving anything. Not youth. Not status. Not superiority. Not revenge against lost time. This is where many men misunderstand their own remaining fire. They think if the dream cannot look the way it would have at 30, it no longer matters. But perhaps maturity changes the assignment. Perhaps now, the dream is not here to make you impressive. Perhaps it is here to make you alive again. Because there is a difference. At 30, a man may chase dreams to become someone. At 50, he may need them to remember who he still is. To recover energy that routine buried. To restore dignity where resignation slowly settled. To prove, not to the world, but to himself, that his internal life is not already over. This matters more than many men admit. Because when a man fully abandons meaningful possibility, he may continue functioning, while quietly disappearing inside. So maybe the question is no longer, can I still become who I once imagined? Maybe it is, what still makes me feel awake enough to return to my life? Because a dream after 50 does not need to make you famous. It needs to make you feel alive again. It needs to return you to aliveness. Picture a man opening an old drawer. Late afternoon light through the curtains. Inside, he finds something from another version of himself. A sketch. A passport holder. A guitar pick. A notebook. A folded paper with names, plans, ideas, places. For a moment, he smiles. Then the smile hurts. Because he remembers who he was when he believed there would be time. And maybe he feels foolish. Too old. Too late. Too far from the man who wanted that thing. But perhaps the dream has changed form. Maybe it no longer needs to become what it would have been at 30. Maybe it needs to become what it can be now. More grounded. More honest. Less about proving. More about meaning. This is important. Because many men abandon dreams after 50 because they compare them to the version that belonged to youth. They think, if I cannot do it the old way, I cannot do it at all. But that is not always true. The dream may need translation. Not abandonment. Maybe you cannot build the same life you imagined at 35. But you can still build a version that brings dignity, purpose, and aliveness now. Maybe you cannot travel everywhere. But you can go somewhere. Maybe you cannot become famous. But you can create. Maybe you cannot restore every lost relationship. But you can repair one. Maybe you cannot become the strongest you ever were. But you can become stronger than you are today. This matters because the soul begins to shrink when it believes nothing meaningful is still possible. And after 50, a man must protect possibility. Not fantasy. Possibility. Fantasy avoids reality. Possibility works with it. Fantasy says, I need everything to be different. Possibility says, what honest step can I take now? Maybe that is all a buried dream needs. Not a grand announcement. A first step. The guitar tuned. The walk begun. The page opened. The ticket researched. The call made. The class joined. The morning claimed. Because sometimes a dream does not need you to feel young again. It needs you to stop acting dead before you are. Time without direction becomes drift. And drift is dangerous after 50. Because life can appear stable while the soul quietly loses motion. You wake. Eat. Work. Scroll. Watch. Sleep. Repeat. Nothing dramatic. Nothing visibly ruined. But something inside becomes less alive. Not because you lack time entirely. Because the time you have is not being aimed. A man after 50 needs direction. Not pressure. Not panic. Direction. A reason to rise with more than habit. A reason to care for the body. A reason to speak truth. A reason to refuse certain tolerations. A reason to become more present. A reason to use the years instead of merely passing through them. Direction does not have to be grand. It has to be real. For one man, direction is rebuilding health. For another, it is becoming emotionally closer to his children. For another, it is creating something. For another, it is serving. For another, it is becoming peaceful enough that his home no longer feels tense. For another, it is leaving behind wisdom in a form others can carry. The question is not whether your direction impresses anyone. The question is whether it organizes your remaining life around what actually matters. Picture a man at a desk before sunrise. Soft blue-gray light outside. A blank page in front of him. He writes 3 words at the top, "Before I go." Then he does something many men avoid for decades. Then he waits. Not dramatically. Honestly. He stops writing vague hopes, and chooses specifics. Not everything. The essentials. 3 things. 1 thing for his body. 1 thing for someone he loves. 1 thing that would leave proof he truly lived. Maybe for his body, it is simple: walk. Strength. Discipline. Stay capable. Not because vanity matters most. Because presence requires stamina. Maybe for love: call the sun. Repair the distance. Tell the truth. Soften before silence hardens. Not because the past disappears. Because some bridges should not remain broken simply because pride stayed comfortable. And maybe for proof: write the book. Build the garden. Start the business. Mentor the younger man. Record the wisdom. Something tangible. Something that says, "I was here consciously." This is where direction becomes real. Not motivational language. Not abstract reflection. Embodied aim. Because many men do not fail from lack of desire. They drift from lack of chosen direction. They keep saying they want meaning, while never naming where their remaining years should actually go. But when a man chooses, even imperfectly, his life begins reorganizing. Time sharpens. Noise weakens. Distraction becomes easier to recognize. Because now, each day is no longer just something to survive. It becomes evidence. Evidence that he is still shaping what remains. What must be repaired before I go? What must be built? What must be said? What must be released? What must be strengthened? Who must feel my love more clearly? What must no longer receive my remaining years? This is not morbidity. This is clarity. Because a man who remembers time is finite may begin living with better aim. He stops giving full days to things that should only receive minutes. He stops letting temporary moods make permanent decisions. He stops treating distraction like rest. He stops mistaking comfort for peace. He stops allowing resentment to occupy rooms where purpose should live. Direction gives time weight. Without direction, time leaks. With direction, even ordinary days become part of something. A walk becomes training for longevity. A phone call becomes legacy. A boundary becomes dignity. A page written becomes testimony. A meal chosen well becomes stewardship. A quiet apology becomes repair. This is how later life becomes powerful. Not by doing everything. By finally knowing what matters enough to do. Because after 50, you may not need more options. You may need a clearer yes. A yes strong enough to create no. No to wasting the body. No to endless postponement. No to relationships built only on guilt. No to numb evenings that steal your remaining fire. No to the lie that later will always be there. And yes to the life that still wants to be lived through you. Readiness can become another version of later. A sophisticated delay. A way to make fear sound wise. I'm not ready yet. I need more clarity. I need the right mood. I need to feel confident first. But after 50, waiting to feel ready can become dangerous. Because readiness often arrives after movement, not before it. The body becomes ready by walking. The voice becomes ready by speaking. The relationship becomes ready through contact. The dream becomes clearer through action. The man becomes stronger by practicing strength before he feels strong. This is not recklessness. It is initiation. The first step rarely feels noble. It often feels awkward. Small. Embarrassing. Uncertain. A man joins the gym and feels out of place. He calls his child and does not know how to begin. He opens the notebook and writes badly. He books the appointment and feels nervous. He walks for 10 minutes and realizes how far he has let things slide. He apologizes and the words come out imperfectly. He starts, and starting reveals the gap. That gap can feel painful. But it is also proof that the old delay has ended. Many men avoid beginning because beginning exposes the truth. How out of shape they are. How distant the relationship became. How rusty the skill feels. How afraid they still are. How much time passed. But exposure is not failure. Exposure is the price of re-entry. Picture a man standing at the edge of a park path at dawn. Cold air. Hands in jacket pockets. Shoes tied. He has promised himself this walk for months. Today he almost turns back. No one would know. No one is watching. But maybe that is exactly why it matters. He takes the first step. Not heroic. Not cinematic. Just honest. And with that step, something changes. Not the body yet. The agreement. He has stopped negotiating with later. This is how the second half of life changes. Not through one huge transformation. Through repeated first steps. First honest call. First doctor visit. First morning walk. First page. First boundary. First apology. First evening without numbing. First decision not to postpone what matters. You may not feel ready. Start anyway. You may feel behind. Start anyway. You may feel embarrassed. Start anyway. You may not know if it will work. Start anyway. Because after 50, confidence is often not the beginning. Confidence is the reward for keeping promises to yourself. And perhaps the man you are waiting to become will not arrive before action. Maybe he is built by action. One uncomfortable choice at a time. Later is not a home. You cannot live there. You can only imagine it. And many men spend years emotionally living in an imagined future while the real present quietly disappears. Later, I will be healthier. Later, I will be honest. Later, I will call. Later, I will forgive. Later, I will begin. Later, I will become more peaceful. Later, I will stop wasting evenings. Later, I will tell them I love them. Later, I will live differently. But eventually, later becomes a room with no door. A place you kept promising to enter until you realized you had been standing outside your own life. This is the final truth of EP 36, you are running out of later. Not out of life. Not out of possibility. Not out of meaning. But out of the illusion that delay has no cost. There is still time. That is the hopeful part. There is still time to walk. To speak. To repair. To build. To leave. To return. To forgive. To become disciplined. To stop explaining and start embodying. To make love easier to feel. To turn silence into truth. To turn regret into movement. But there may not be time to keep postponing all of it indefinitely. Picture a man at night, standing by a window. The room behind him is dim. A warm lamp glows softly. Outside, the street is quiet. He sees his reflection in the glass. Older than before. Still here. Still breathing. Still capable of choosing. And maybe, for the first time in years, he does not make a dramatic promise. He does not say he will change everything tomorrow. He does not create a fantasy of total reinvention. He simply tells the truth, I cannot keep giving my life to later. That sentence is enough. If he honors it. Because the second half of life is not asking for panic. It is asking for presence. Present enough to know time is finite. Brave enough to act before certainty. Humble enough to repair while people are still reachable. Disciplined enough to care for the body before it forces crisis. Awake enough to stop tolerating what is spending the years. And honest enough to admit that later has been overused. Maybe this is where real freedom begins after 50. Not when you have unlimited options. But when you finally choose what matters because you know options are not unlimited. That is not a tragedy. That is clarity. And clarity can make the remaining years more alive than decades lived unconsciously. So do not wait for fear to disappear. Do not wait for the perfect time. Do not wait until regret becomes unbearable. Do not wait until your body, your relationships, or your dreams force the conversation. Begin where you are. With one call. One walk. One truth. One boundary. One repair. One page. One decision that tells your remaining life, I am here now. Because later is not infinite. But this moment is real. And maybe this moment is still enough to change what remains. In the next episode, we go deeper into the men who age best. Because some men fade. Others become undeniable. And the difference is not luck. It is what they do differently.